Are you waiting for a special invitation? I said breakfast is on the table.
I heard you. So did every moose up in Canada.
Television used to play it safe, but that all ended with a few brave shows. These sitcoms from the 70s and 80s did not just entertain, they started arguments, broke barriers, and secretly changed your life. Believe it or not, one of them was so shocking, the network fought the creators every single week to keep it off the air. 1. Bewitched.
Didn't you read the sign? The door is out of order.
Not for Samantha Stevens, it isn't. How is that, Abner? Tell me, please explain it to me.
I'll explain it to you. You're out of order.
Let's start with a little magic. On the surface, Bewitched was a simple show about a witch named Samantha who marries a regular guy, Darren Stevens, and tries to live a normal life in the suburbs. It started in the 60s, but wrapped up in 1972, right as the world was changing. The thing nobody tells you is that this show was secretly about power. You see, Samantha was the most powerful person in her household. She could do anything with a twitch of her nose. Yet she was constantly trying to suppress her amazing abilities to make her husband happy. This was a clever way to talk about the roles of women back then. Many women felt they had to hide their talents and ambitions to fit into the idea of a perfect housewife. The show became a massive hit for ABC, proving that audiences were interested in stories about strong female characters, even if their strength was hidden behind fantasy. It was a gentle start, but it opened the door for shows that would be much more direct about a woman's place in the world. But Samantha was not the only magical woman on TV. Another one lived in a bottle and served a master. And her story would also make people think, but in a completely different way. 2. I Dream of Jeannie.
General, I tell you, this man can see through the walls. Why, he can even see me in my underwear.
My father begged me to go into banking, and I wouldn't listen to him.
Imagine being an astronaut who crash lands on a desert island and finds a bottle. Inside is a beautiful 2,000-year-old genie who calls you Master. That was the wild setup for I Dream of Jeannie. Like Bewitched, this show used fantasy to explore relationships between men and women. Jeannie, played by Barbara Eden, was incredibly powerful but spent all her time trying to please her master, Tony Nelson. To put it mildly, the show was a huge hit, running until 1970. What many overlooked was the dynamic it presented. Here was this all-powerful being devoted completely to a man. While it was played for laughs, it reflected a very traditional view of relationships. The show was the flip side of the coin to Bewitched. Together, these two fantasy shows perfectly captured the conversation America was about to have about gender roles as it entered a new decade. They were the last of the old-school fantasies before television got shockingly real. The era of magic was fading. Up next, TV would find its comedy in something much more grounded, like two grown men who could not stand each other living in the same apartment. 3. The Odd Couple.
Are you here to see Dr. Bates?
He is.
I'm Oscar Madison. I have an appointment.
Right, just 5 minutes. And you?
I'm his friend. I'm normal.
What happens when a super neat and tidy man moves in with a complete slob? You get The Odd Couple. Based on a popular play, the show starred Tony Randall as the fussy Felix Unger and Jack Klugman as the messy Oscar Madison. These two divorced men were trying to save money by living together in a New York City apartment, and the results were hilarious. This show changed TV by proving you did not need a traditional family to make a sitcom work. You see, the real heart of the show was the friendship between Felix and Oscar. They argued constantly, but they also cared about each other. It was one of the first sitcoms to really focus on the relationship between two male friends. It perfected the mismatched buddies formula that you still see in movies and TV shows today. The show won awards and was loved by critics for its smart writing. It showed that comedy could come from character and personality, not just silly situations. The Odd Couple proved a sitcom did not need a mom and dad. But the next show would take that idea even further, proving that a single woman could be the center of her own universe, without a husband at all. 4. The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
I'd like to give you a chance to atone for hanging up on me today and do a service for mankind at the same time.
She already did a service for mankind by hanging up on you.
This is the show that truly broke the mold. The Mary Tyler Moore Show was about Mary Richards, a woman in her 30s who, after a breakup, moves to the big city of Minneapolis. She gets a job at a TV news station and builds a new life for herself, surrounded by her friends and co-workers. This sounds normal now, but in 1970, it was revolutionary. Mary was not a widow or a divorcee. She was a single woman by choice. The show was a game changer because it presented a woman who was happy and successful on her own. Her life did not revolve around finding a man. It revolved around her career and her friendships, which she called her work family. This idea was brand new and inspired millions of women. The show was also known for its incredible writing and amazing cast of characters, like her grumpy boss, Lou Grant, and her funny neighbor, Rhoda. It was so influential that it launched its own production company, MTM Enterprises, which created many other hit shows. Mary Richards was a quiet revolutionary, but television was about to get a lot louder with a character who was not afraid to say exactly what was on his mind, no matter how offensive it was. 5. All in the Family.
The springs was all loose.
So was your mother's.
And it was covered with beer stains.
So was your mother.
No sitcom in history had a bigger impact than All in the Family. The show centered on Archie Bunker, a loud, prejudiced working-class man from Queens, New York. He was constantly arguing with his liberal son-in-law, who he called Meathead, his kind-hearted wife Edith, and his progressive daughter Gloria. The show did something no comedy had ever dared to do before. It tackled real-world issues head-on. Every week, the Bunkers would argue about politics, prejudice, and all the hot topics of the day. The thing nobody tells you is that the network, CBS, was terrified of the show. They even put a disclaimer before the first episode, warning viewers that it might be shocking. But people were hungry for this kind of honesty. It became the #1 show in America for 5 straight years. It used laughter to make people think about their own beliefs. It proved that a sitcom could be more than just silly jokes. It could be a powerful way to talk about society. All in the Family was so huge, it created a universe of spin-offs. One of the most successful took the Bunkers' neighbors and moved them on up to a deluxe apartment in the sky. 6. MASH.
Pierce, you disgust me. That's right, Frank. I disgust you with everyone I know. They all think you're disgusting.
What if a show was a comedy 1 minute and a serious drama the next? That was the brilliant trick of MASH. Set during the Korean War, the show followed a team of doctors and nurses in a mobile army surgical hospital. The lead character, Hawkeye Pierce, played by Alan Alda, used jokes and pranks to cope with the unbelievable stress of his job. The show was hilarious, but it never let you forget where it was set. MASH changed television forever by mixing comedy and drama in a way no one had ever seen. One moment you would be laughing, and the next you would be heartbroken watching the doctors lose a patient in the operating room. What many overlooked is that the show was really talking about the Vietnam War, which was still happening when the show started. It was a powerful statement about the costs of conflict. Its finale in 1983 was a massive cultural event. A mind-blowing 106 million people watched it, making it the most-watched scripted television episode in American history, a record that will likely never be broken. MASH used comedy to talk about war. Our next show used comedy to explore a different kind of battlefield, a junkyard in Los Angeles. 7. Sanford and Son.
Hello, Fred.
Hello, Woody. Goodbye, Woody.
I'm coming, Elizabeth. It's the big one. Anyone who watched TV in the 70s knows that line. It was the catchphrase of Fred G. Sanford, a grumpy, wisecracking junk dealer played by the legendary comedian Red Fox. Sanford and Son was about Fred and his long-suffering son, Lamont, trying to run their business in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles. The show was groundbreaking. It was one of the first sitcoms to star a black family, and it was a massive hit, consistently ranking in the top 10. The show was developed by Norman Lear, the same man behind All in the Family, and it had a similar feel. It was funny, but it also touched on real issues like poverty and race. But the real reason it changed TV was Red Fox. He was a comedic genius, and his performance as Fred Sanford turned the character into a cultural icon. The show proved that a sitcom centered on black characters could be a ratings powerhouse and appeal to audiences of all backgrounds. Fred and Lamont were always dreaming of a better life. The next show on our list would take that dream and make it a reality, spinning off a family into a life of luxury. 8. Happy Days.
You're not going to watch me, are you, Fonz?
No, I got my own shopping to do.
You really shop?
No, little elves bring all that food to my door.
Let's take a trip back to the 1950s, or at least the 70s version of it. Happy Days was a nostalgic look back at the life of Richie Cunningham, a wholesome teenager growing up in Milwaukee. The show was a feel-good escape, full of sock hops, drive-ins, and family values. But what really changed TV was a minor character who was not even supposed to be a big deal. His name was Arthur Fonzarelli, better known as the Fonz. The Fonz, with his leather jacket, motorcycle, and cool "aye" catchphrase, became a pop culture phenomenon. He was so popular that the show, which was originally about Richie, slowly became all about the Fonz. He was the king of cool. Happy Days became a ratings giant and started a nationwide craze for 1950s nostalgia. Believe it or not, the show was so influential, it even gave us a famous phrase, jumping the shark. It comes from an episode where Fonzie, on water skis, literally jumps over a shark, a moment many fans felt was the beginning of the show's decline. Happy Days was so popular, it launched its own spin-offs. The next one would focus on 2 female characters and become just as big as the original. 9. Good Times.
Suppose one of the kids had heard you said they was born out of wedlock.
Wouldn't bother me none. I ain't the oldest.
Dynamite. That one word captures the energy of Good Times, another groundbreaking sitcom from producer Norman Lear. A spin-off of the show, Maude, which itself was a spin-off of All in the Family, Good Times was about the Evans family, living in a housing project in Chicago. Florida and James Evans were doing their best to raise their 3 children, JJ, Thelma, and Michael, in the face of poverty and struggle. This show was a big deal. It was the first sitcom to feature a 2-parent black family. While it was a comedy, it never shied away from serious topics. The Evans family dealt with unemployment, crime, and other hardships. The breakout star was Jimmy Walker, who played the goofy oldest son, JJ. His catchphrases and loud personality made him a huge star. But the heart of the show was the love and strength of the family. Good Times showed the reality of life for many urban families, bringing stories to television that had never been told before. The Evans family showed the struggles of a working-class family. Our next show would also focus on a family facing challenges, but this time, the family was led by a single mom trying to do it all on her own. 10. One Day at a Time.
I mean, you serious?
seriously think I'm worried about sex?
Now, why would you think that?
Well, it's gotta be. It always is with old people.
In 1975, the idea of a sitcom centered on a divorced woman raising her children was a huge deal. That is exactly what One Day at a Time did. The show followed Ann Romano, a recently divorced mother who moves with her 2 teenage daughters, Julie and Barbara, to Indianapolis to start a new life. The show was funny, but it was also incredibly real. This was another Norman Lear production, and it changed TV by putting a divorced, independent woman at the very center of the story. Ann was not looking for a new husband to solve her problems. She was focused on her career and raising her daughters. The show explored topics that were rarely seen on TV at the time, like teenage rebellion and a woman's place in the workforce. It was a massive hit for over 9 seasons, proving that audiences were ready for stories that reflected the changing reality of the American family. Ann Romano showed that a mom could lead a family on her own. But what if a family was not just moving to a new city, but moving on up to a whole new social class? 11. The Jeffersons.
Hello? George? Oh, come on, Louise, I'm too tired.
George and Louise Jefferson started as the neighbors of Archie Bunker on All in the Family. But George's dry cleaning business became so successful that they left Queens behind for a deluxe apartment on the east side of Manhattan. The Jeffersons was a revolutionary show because it was one of the first to portray a wealthy and successful black family. The show was a monster hit, running for an incredible 11 seasons. It became one of the longest-running sitcoms in history. The comedy came from the hot-headed George, played by Sherman Hemsley, clashing with his calm wife Wheezy and his fancy new neighbors. But what made it so important was what it represented. It was a powerful image of black success and upward mobility. It showed that the American dream was for everyone. The show's theme song, "Movin' On Up," became an anthem, perfectly capturing the aspirational spirit of the series. The Jeffersons was about leaving the old neighborhood behind. Our next show was about a teacher who went back to the tough neighborhood he grew up in to teach a class of kids nobody else wanted. 12. Welcome Back, Cotter.
Why don't you look on the bright side of things? Gives you Saturday night free to stay home and catch up on your homework.
Don't you realize if I don't go out Saturday night, how boring my confession's gonna be?
Welcome to Buchanan High School, where the toughest students were a group of wisecracking kids known as the Sweat Hogs. The only person who could handle them was their teacher, Gabe Cotter, because he used to be a sweat hog himself. Welcome Back, Cotter was a huge hit in the mid-70s, known for its hilarious classroom scenes and memorable characters. The show changed TV in a couple of big ways. First, it focused on a diverse group of city kids, giving a voice to characters who were not often seen on television. The Sweat Hogs, with names like Vinnie Barbarina and Freddie Boom Boom Washington, were a lovable bunch of misfits. Second, the show launched the career of a future superstar. The role of Vinnie Barbarino was played by a young, unknown actor named John Travolta. His charm and good looks made him the show's breakout star and propelled him to movie stardom. The show's catchphrases like "up your nose with a rubber hose" became part of the national conversation. The Sweat Hogs were a gang of funny guys. But our next show proved that a pair of funny ladies could be an even bigger sensation. 13. Laverne and Shirley.
Thump, thump. Thump, thump.
You know, Laverne, if you're not busy Tuesday, I thought maybe we could go out.
Thump, 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 thump.
Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Hasenpfeffer Incorporated. That silly chant kicked off every episode of Laverne and Shirley, one of the most popular shows of the 1970s. A spin-off of Happy Days, the show followed 2 best friends and roommates, Laverne DeFazio and Shirley Feeney, who worked as bottle cappers at a Milwaukee brewery. It was a simple show about two working-class women trying to make their dreams come true. But here's the kicker. This show became a ratings juggernaut. It was the #1 show in America, even beating its parent show, Happy Days. It changed TV by proving that a female buddy comedy could be a massive success. The physical comedy of its stars, Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams, was brilliant. They were like a female version of Laurel and Hardy. The show celebrated female friendship and the lives of blue-collar women in a way that had never been done before, and audiences absolutely loved it. Laverne and Shirley were young women starting their lives. The next show would fast-forward decades, proving that life and comedy did not end after a certain age. 14. The Golden Girls.
That superstitious nonsense. You know, step on a crack, break your mother's back. It doesn't work. I know.
Picture it, Miami, 1985. A sitcom about 4 older women living together. On paper, it sounded like a show that might not find an audience. In reality, The Golden Girls became one of the most beloved and groundbreaking sitcoms of all time. The show featured 4 unforgettable characters: the smart Dorothy, the sweet Rose, the flirtatious Blanche, and Dorothy's sharp-tongued mother, Sophia. The Golden Girls changed television by shattering stereotypes about older people. It showed that women over 50 could be funny, vibrant, and lead complex lives. The writing was incredibly sharp, and the conversations around the cheesecake-filled kitchen table were legendary. They talked openly and hilariously about everything from dating to aging to social issues. The show was a ratings smash and won a pile of Emmy Awards. It proved that a show did not need young stars to be a hit, a lesson that television still remembers today. The Golden Girls were 4 women running their household. But what if the household roles were completely flipped, with a man taking care of the house for a powerful woman? 15. Who's the Boss?
There are all kinds of love. There's the way you love your family.
And the way you love your snake.
And the way you love your housekeeper.
The 1980s were a time of seismic shifts in the traditional family structure, and no show captured this evolving landscape with more charm and humor than Who's the Boss? The series, which premiered in 1984, introduced America to Tony Micheli, a retired baseball player and widower from the tough streets of Brooklyn. Seeking a better life for his daughter, Samantha, Tony makes the unconventional decision to answer an ad for a live-in housekeeper. This lands him in the upscale, perfectly manicured world of Fairfield, Connecticut, and in the employ of Angela Bauer, a divorced, high-powered advertising executive raising her son, Jonathan. He moves into her immaculate home, bringing his street-smart sensibility and a whole lot of heart. The show's premise was a masterstroke of social commentary disguised as a sitcom, a complete and deliberate reversal of traditional gender roles that made it a true game-changer. Here, you had a tough, stereotypically masculine Italian-American man enthusiastically taking on domestic duties, cooking, cleaning, and child-rearing, roles almost exclusively portrayed by women on television. Conversely, Angela was the primary breadwinner, a successful, career-driven woman who was confident and in charge, yet still navigating the complexities of single motherhood. This modern, blended family setup was a breath of fresh air for television, and it resonated deeply with millions of viewers who were seeing their own changing lives reflected on screen. The dynamic between the blue-collar, easygoing Tony and the white-collar, slightly uptight Angela created a perfect comedic friction. But beneath the laughs, the slow-burn romance between them became the show's undeniable heart, a will they won't they dance that kept audiences hooked for 8 full seasons. Aided by the hilarious, man-crazy antics of Angela's mother, Mona, the show was a sweet, funny, and deeply influential sitcom that not only reflected, but also helped normalize the changing dynamics of the American family. Who's the Boss? Showed a picture of a modern, blended family finding its way with humor and grace. Our next show would strip away the Connecticut gloss and present a family that felt much more real, raw, and messy, led by a mom who was unlike any other matriarch television had ever dared to imagine. 16. Roseanne.
Jackie, I think it's time to turn off the
No,
computer.
not now, David. I'm learning useful things. I'm growing as a person.
You're in the Urkel chat room.
For decades, the mothers of television sitcoms were paragons of domestic perfection. From June Cleaver to Carol Brady, they were poised, flawlessly coiffed, and presided over spotless homes where happy kids ate balanced meals and problems were solved with a gentle word and a warm smile. Then in 1988 came Roseanne Connor. With her signature sarcastic laugh and no-nonsense attitude, she bulldozed that entire archetype. Roseanne was a sitcom about a working-class family struggling to get by in Lanford, Illinois, and it felt more bracingly real than anything that had come before it. The Connors yelled, they struggled with bills, they were overweight, their furniture was worn, and their house was definitely not always tidy. At the turbulent, loving center of it all was Roseanne, a sharp-tongued, wisecracking, and fiercely protective mother who ruled her household with an iron fist and a heart of gold. The show was nothing short of a revolution. It gave an authentic and powerful voice to blue-collar America, a massive segment of the population that had been largely ignored or caricatured by Hollywood. Roseanne and her husband Dan, played with incredible warmth by John Goodman, were true partners, a team navigating the relentless stress of low-wage jobs, raising 3 distinct and often difficult kids, and trying to keep their heads above water. The series was universally praised by critics and audiences alike for its stunningly realistic portrayal of family life, tackling tough, previously taboo subjects like unemployment, debt, teen pregnancy, and social inequality with unflinching honesty and brilliant humor. It didn't offer easy answers because, for the Connors, there weren't any. Roseanne shot to the top of the ratings and became one of the most watched shows on television, proving that audiences were starved for a dose of reality and were more than ready to trade televised perfection for something genuine. Roseanne showed a family that felt profoundly real, with all its flaws and financial struggles. But the 80s also gave us a family that was almost too good to be true, a house overflowing with so much love, so many hugs, and so many life lessons that it became a pop culture touchstone for a generation. 17. Full House. When a young sports broadcaster named Danny Tanner is suddenly faced with raising his 3 young daughters, DJ, Stephanie, and Michelle, after his wife is tragically killed, he realizes he can't do it alone. In a move that would define a new kind of television family, he gets some much-needed help from his rock and roller brother-in-law, the suave and hair-obsessed Jesse Katsopoulos, and his goofy, cartoon-loving best friend, Joey Gladstone. That was the setup for Full House, a show that premiered in 1987 and would become one of the most beloved and defining family sitcoms of the late 80s and early 90s. It was a home filled with 3 father figures, each offering a different brand of guidance, from Danny's obsession with cleaning and order to Jesse's lessons in coolness to Joey's nonstop jokes. Full House changed TV by perfecting and crystallizing the formula for the wholesome, lesson-of-the-week family comedy. It was a show built on a foundation of sincerity. Nearly every single episode revolved around a relatable childhood or teenage problem, a fight with a best friend, a first crush, the fear of a school play, and culminated in a heartwarming talk where a character learned a valuable life lesson, almost always accompanied by a swell of sentimental, uplifting music. The show presented a deeply non-traditional family structure, 3 men raising 3 girls, and portrayed it as a bastion of unconditional love and unwavering support. While it was never a show that critics fell in love with, audiences, especially kids and families, absolutely adored it. Its earnestness was its strength. It launched the careers of its young stars, most notably Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, who shared the role of Michelle and became global phenomenons. Moreover, its iconic catchphrases from Michelle's "You got it, dude" to Stephanie's exasperated "How rude" became permanently embedded in the pop culture lexicon and are still quoted fondly today. Full House was the ultimate feel-good family show, a televised security blanket. But another groundbreaking hit from the very same year took the core idea of the family sitcom and turned it completely, violently, and hilariously upside down. 18. Married with Children.
I love that car more than anything that I have.
What about us?
You need a Q-tip?
What if a family sitcom was centered on a family that not only didn't learn valuable life lessons, but seemed to actively resent each other's existence? That was the shocking, caustic, and brilliantly hilarious premise behind Married with Children. The show, which also debuted in 1987, introduced the world to the Bundy family, a glorious monument to suburban misery. At its head was Al Bundy, a once proud high school football star now working as a miserable women's shoe salesman who hated his job, his customers, and his life. He was joined by Peg, his lazy, big-haired wife who loved to shop on his meager dime and avoid all forms of housework, Kelly, their beautiful but hopelessly dim-witted and promiscuous daughter, and Bud, their scheming, unpopular son who was perpetually frustrated in his attempts to woo the opposite gender. This show wasn't just different. It was the definitive anti-family sitcom. It was rude, crude, and gleefully cynical, systematically making fun of all the sweet, wholesome family values that shows like Full House and Growing Pains celebrated. For the Bundys, there were no hugs, no learning, and certainly no sentimental music. Instead, their lives were a torrent of insults, failures, and selfish schemes. The series was a cornerstone for the brand new Fox network, helping to establish its identity as a home for edgy, daring, and alternative programming that stood in stark contrast to the safer fare on the big three networks. Married with Children was a massive risk, and its unapologetic vulgarity offended many, leading to advertiser boycotts. But the controversy only made it more famous, and it found a massive, loyal audience that was tired of the saccharine perfection of other TV families. It proved emphatically that there was a huge appetite on television for a much more cynical, satirical, and darkly realistic kind of comedy. The Bundys made a mockery of the perfect family ideal. Our next show, however, returned to that ideal, featuring a family that seemed picture-perfect on the outside, but had its own set of charming and relatable problems brewing on the inside. 19. Growing Pains.
Now, Jason, don't do anything foolish.
Maggie, do I look like I'm about to do something foolish?
On the surface, the Seaver family from Long Island, New York, seemed to have it all. Dr. Jason Seaver was a compassionate psychiatrist who, in a progressive move for the time, relocated his practice to a home office so he could be more present for his children. This allowed his wife, Maggie, to confidently return to her career as a tenacious reporter. Together, they were raising their 3 kids, the charming, troublemaking oldest son, Mike, the brilliant, overachieving middle child, Carol, and the cute, precocious youngest son, Ben. Debuting in 1985, Growing Pains was a classic 80s family sitcom in every sense, full of heartwarming moments, gentle humor, and valuable life lessons delivered with sincerity. It was the epitome of comfortable, family-friendly viewing. So, how did this seemingly conventional show change TV? While it didn't reinvent the wheel, it perfected the 80s family sitcom formula and, in doing so, became an unexpected launchpad for future megastars. The show's undeniable breakout star was Kirk Cameron, who played Mike. Though written as a supporting character, Cameron's charisma and comedic timing made the rebellious but good-hearted Mike the focus of the show. He became a massive teen idol, his face adorning the cover of every teen magazine and his posters covering the bedroom walls of teenagers across America. The show's popularity endured for 7 seasons, and in its final year, a new character was introduced, a young homeless teen named Luke Brower, whom the Seavers took in. That character was played by a very young, largely unknown actor named Leonardo DiCaprio, showcasing the early talent that would make him one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Growing Pains perfectly captured the optimistic, family-centric spirit of the era and helped define the television landscape of the decade. The Seavers showed a family where the parents were thoughtfully trying to balance their careers and their kids. But what if the ideological divide wasn't between the parents, but between the parents and their children, creating a generational clash that defined an entire era? 20. Family Ties. In the 1980s, America was undergoing a profound cultural and political transformation. The idealism and liberal activism of the 1960s and 70s were giving way to the pragmatism and conservatism of the Reagan era. No show in history captured this specific moment of ideological collision more perfectly or with more humor than Family Ties. The series centered on the Keaton family of suburban Ohio. Stephen and Elise Keaton were the very definition of baby boomers, former peace-loving hippies from the 1960s who still held on to their liberal values. The brilliant comedic twist was that their oldest son, Alex P. Keaton, was their complete ideological opposite. He was a staunchly conservative, ambitious young Republican who carried a briefcase to school, wore a suit and tie to the dinner table, and idolized President Ronald Reagan and economist Milton Friedman. This ingenious setup was pure comedic gold, and it made Family Ties the defining sitcom of the 80s. The generation gap was the undeniable heart of the show, providing an endless well of conflict and comedy as the liberal parents constantly clashed with their buttoned-up, materialistic son. The show became a cultural touchstone because it so perfectly mirrored the political and social debates happening at dinner tables across the country. What many viewers may not realize is that the show was originally conceived to focus on the parents, Stephen and Elise, as they navigated raising children in a new, more conservative world. But the actor who played Alex, a charismatic and preternaturally gifted young Canadian named Michael J. Fox, was so incredibly funny and charming that he completely stole the show. His performance turned Alex from a simple caricature into a beloved multi-dimensional character. Fox became one of the biggest stars in the world, parlaying his TV fame into movie stardom with Back to the Future. In the end, Family Ties went down in history as a brilliantly written sitcom that not only produced a superstar, but also perfectly encapsulated a pivotal moment in American culture.